And they kind of do it like Dr. Gossen said, behind closed doors, and it should be honored. As a graduate who has had a professional career as a journalist, I am grateful to those teachers for really showing me what I needed to do when I stepped into the real world.
Good. Very good. Did you?
Yeah, I think that'd be more of a question. How would we as students change those minds of faculty administration who don't necessarily value our opinion? I mean, we can say that we want to do this, but how do we change those people who don't believe that?
Now this is you.
Yeah, that's a tough question. Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, so I think I think this is partially that comment about culture change. I mean, there are going to be some faculty and some administrators that are not going to be sympathetic to this. There are going to be some that are your allies. You know, so it's starting with your allies and figuring out how do they get them to support something that, you know, might work. I think there's also, you know, there's definitely that segment that's not going to be sympathetic at all. But my experience is the large middle ground of folks where really culture change happens are folks that are going to be more sympathetic to students coming and asking for this stuff than from Byron or even from a colleague or from someone in student affairs. You know, when it comes from students, if you want to get a faculty member to teach a service learning course, the most effective way is to get a student who's been working at a community-based organization to approach a faculty member and say, you know, this could bring alive the stuff that we're doing in our class, and for the student to make that connection. So I think as students, you're going to run into some real roadblocks, and I think in organizing, we say is like until you hear no, you haven't even started. So, but then to have a base of support where when you hear those no's, you can have some sympathetic allies that are going to support you, and a group of colleagues and other students that are trying to help you with your cause. So that's a little bit abstract, but I bet you there's probably some concrete examples of folks who've actually done this on campus.
Yes.
I was going to ask, my name is Monica Williams. I'm coordinator for an early college high school at Tracy. How can we get institutions to maybe encourage faculty who aren't from the typical disciplines, such as like English or sociology, like different subject areas to engage, to become a part of this? That's my question.
Yeah, and well, I know Carrie Ann O'Mara was here last time talking a little bit more about faculty roles and rewards. So that I think probably got into some of that. I think for engagement work, I think no matter what the discipline is, and I think this can work in any discipline, and it's done in any discipline, is how does this, for faculty, is how does this add to what you want the learning to be in your class? So I think that's where you have to start. How can work in the community be another core text that can bring learning alive in the same way that any other text that you might want to imagine? I mean, so I think at CSU, I could imagine, you know, your education program, urban education, it's probably a really easy sell to do engagement work. You know, but there's examples in the STEM fields, you know, any discipline where faculty are connecting their scholarship and their teaching with work in the community. Do you have a specific discipline that you're like really struggling to think through how it could work in?
Well, I can.
Just throw that out.
Yeah.
I think the degree of engagement depends on the disciplines. For example, in social work, you have to be engaged because your students have to get into the field, bring you what they did, what they saw, what they heard, and from there you talk about how to, to give them ideas on how to solve them based on your knowledge. These are the students are really the one who are initiating the process and the one who will be finishing it, because they will go back and do this and have to practice in the field. So in social work you have to do it, but it could be different from English. You're teaching English.
So I'll just tell you my just scan of what I've heard on campus, talking to faculty across campus in all disciplines. So I've spoken to faculty in the liberal arts who will say, you know, this is a whole lot easier to do in professional programs because this is what they do. And I've talked to folks in the professional programs who say, you know, this is a whole lot easier to do in the liberal arts than our program, which is regimented and has certain skills. And then I've talked to folks who said, you know, this is easy to do in urban. And I've talked to staff in urban and they go, folks don't get that, you know, they're doing it everywhere else. It's really, no one sees what we're doing. So I would say, and let me say one other thing, even within fields like social work, and I know faculty in social work that do this very well, but there are fields where, if you talk about the principles we've been talking about of engagement, where it's real reciprocity, partnerships with the community. There are ways to do that poorly in fields that have a very close connection to communities, but may not be collaborative. It may be top down. And so even within those fields that some may say are naturals, there might be a distinction in doing this work in the way that Nick is describing and others have described. So I would, you know, my experience is there's a way to do it well in every discipline. And there are examples nationally. Maybe the next place we go in our dialogues is at a discipline level where someone may say, well, how is this work done that way in this discipline or that discipline? I was at Missouri State last week and heard about it. You may know, I forget the organization. Carrie may have mentioned it, of liberal arts humanities faculty focused on civic engagement and ways to do civic engagement as through philosophy and modern languages and English and so forth. So anyway, so there are ways, right?
Can I just sort of add to this one, and I'll be quick, and and it was humanities out there. That was what
See,
she
it was Dr. O'Meara.
Yes, discussing, and want to thank you because the Dean's Diversity Committee is trying to, and it will take us a couple of years, to do an interdisciplinary service learning course for non-majors, so that if you're an English major or a chemistry major or that you don't have to go into something that is your field, but you can experience community service.
Right.
And so thank you.
And I think the large message here is that some direction on ways to think about engagement and interdisciplinary work from students, and not just the disciplinary expert, might give us some insight into ways we can make connections that we don't have, that we haven't done. So how do we draw on them?
And if we're talking about the student voice, all courses have a course evaluation at the end. You may think about trying to develop a couple of questions that really get to the student to allow them to respond to, you know, how did that course meet some of those, you know, civic engagement types of objectives, which would be one way that you begin to find out in which classes and which ways are, you know, is that happening?
That is a good idea.
That's great. Any other questions, thoughts, feedback? Is there a student who wants to have the last word? Mo, you have never not. What is that? It's senior year, Mello. I'm done, man, because I've never heard that. You don't have to take it. Although I have just tossed it.
I think that this has been very helpful, and just being in city government for 4 years now, everything that has been said today is a real challenge that we have every day, trying to change the culture and trying to, you know, force ourselves into the decision-making process, and whether it's in the classroom or outside of the classroom. Now, when we talk about student government, it's usually more outside of the classroom, but I think the points that were touched on today were definitely some real issues that a student who is looking to be engaged and looking to have a voice are difficulties that they face every day. And so one thing you just said right now was, until you have heard no, you haven't even started. That is just absolutely, to the point of, you keep trying and you keep trying to change the culture, and the point being is that we are in this together, and this has to be a collaborative effort. And there are a lot of allies out there, whether it's from the faculty or the administration, who believe in the role of students, who believe that it is important to listen to what students have to say.
Thanks.
Great.
Nat?
No, that's a perfect last
Yeah.
word.
We'll
Thanks.
end on that. Please register at the Civic Commons. As you can see, there's a lot of conversation yet to have, and that's one way for us to continue to have it. Thank you all. Thanks for sticking out the whole time. Appreciate it.